Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you to look back over the action in the British Basketball League this week. Let's go back to Wednesday night, and we're starting with the closest game of the week, which was the Plymouth City Patriots 93, the Manchester Giants 99. That was in overtime, and the Patriots really jumped out early in this game. They got 11-2 start, and Kofi Joseph showed what his evening was going to be about by getting 5 of them, and they really took it to Manchester.
Yeah, Manchester. I was watching the first half and just thinking about the amount of times we've been in Plymouth and exactly the same thing has happened. You've got a long trip, you get there, it's an unusual gym, unusual sightlines. And in Manchester, got a lot of new guys who haven't played much in the BBL and haven't played much in Plymouth. And they didn't make a shot in the first half, and Plymouth jumped on them. To be fair, it was intriguing because LVC do shows with Albania. So that in effect, the point guard was Kofi Joseph's. PJ put the ball in Kofi Joseph's hands. And that basically allowed him to be involved in every play and to initiate and also to get downhill off the screen and roll early. And Manchester, again, Kofi Joseph's second game, basically, so no one's ready for him. Well, Manchester certainly weren't ready for him. So, Plymouth was scrappy. They had a crowd behind them. Manchester were a little bit off. It doesn't take much. They didn't make a three for a long time. I think McKnight eventually made one in the corner. And Plymouth got out early, but then Plymouth went into that kind of second quarter funk when they couldn't score.
Yeah, they led by 11, and then Manchester had a 14-2 run, as you touched on there, to tie the game at 34 points apiece. And then you start to wonder, have Plymouth got anything in response to that, having had that early lead, and now it's gone against them for a few minutes?
Yeah, and you did, and expecting Manchester kind of put their foot on the pedal, but Manchester also hampered by the fact it's always this thing. If you've got a lot of players, if it's all going well, it's great because you rotate them in, everybody's happy, everybody's high five, and they're all fresh and they're all playing well. But if your first 5 kind of doesn't put it together, then you're relying on your bench to come in and try and put it together. And then you're mixing and matching and looking for a group which works. And some guys can be out of rhythm and some guys can be ineffective. And by the time you've kind of figured it out, you're halfway through the fourth quarter and you're down 10, So that can be a difficult thing when you're on the road and when you've got lots of players. So I thought Manchester did well to kind of fight the way back, but they came back in with their defense. And then the second half, again, it was very much Kofi was being allowed to get whatever shot he wanted. And it was almost like they couldn't believe he was making them. And it took them until he scored about 36 before they started actually throwing extra bodies at him, which was probably 15 too late.
Well, he had 7 in a 10-3 run early in the third quarter, which put them up 10, and they were still up 10 with 8 minutes to play in the ball game. And full disclosure on this, I was driving back home because I'd done a Euro Cup game, I think it was, on Wednesday, and was in complete standstill traffic because of a car accident for about half an hour. So I'd put this game on my laptop while it was going, and then obviously we started going, but it was hooked up to the it might have been on my phone. It was hooked up to the Bluetooth. So I listened to the commentary in the fourth quarter without being able to see the pictures. And to be fair to Pablo, he shouted out the score often enough that I was able to follow where it was in the game. But interestingly, listening to it, there was a lot of talk about how nervous all the fans were in the building, which made me give the sense that maybe Pablo and Paul were quite nervous as well, as the lead was getting smaller and smaller down the stretch.
Yeah, well, as I say, with Manchester, it can take you a while before you figure out who's going to finish the game for you and who's the group that you really want. Plymouth were very much Kofi got his points in this game, but at one point I think he had, before overtime, he had something like 40 and 7, and he created 60. He had 60 or scored or created 60 of their 80 odd points, which tends to mean that there's not many other people. Everybody's waiting for him to make a play, basically.
Yeah.
And so they didn't get as much out of some of the other guys. down the stretch. And it was down the stretch, which was when Manchester started basically paying attention to the fact that this guy was about to drop 50 on them, and decided that they were going to pack the lane a little bit more so he couldn't slice through off the screen and roll, and they were going to chase him round on the catch as well, and try and take it with a 3-point shot. And then Plymouth's offense kind of just deteriorated a little bit, as I say, because there wasn't a natural, it wasn't like obviously was there to direct it. And it was very much reliant on Kofi making plays, which he made a hell of a lot of, to be fair. And it nearly got them home. It nearly got them home.
A 3 from Ubiaria made it 76-70 with 4.5 to play, but then Giants got the next 7 points to take the lead with 1:28 to go. Kofi then hits another 3, 79.
That was a serious shot.
Incredible shot, really, to go up 2. And then Clark misses a 3. They get the rebound. A couple of fouls, and there was an advance the ball as well. And 10 seconds to go, you've got the guy you want on the line with 2 free throws to essentially win the game.
Yeah, you're up 2, and the first shot he didn't make all night. Basically, it seemed like, I think he was 14 or 18 or something like that.
It was the only free throw he missed. He was 11 of 12 from the free throw line.
And so then you're up 3, and then you've got the I think you made the second one, didn't you? Which gave Manchester the chance to call a timeout.
Yes.
And obviously it's the other way around. It's a bit different. He makes the second one, Manchester call a timeout, and then you've got the what do you do? The European thing. What do you do? You're up 3 with 10 seconds to go. Do you roll the dice or do you put them on the line?
And they chose to play defense, and I thought they played good defense for the first 8 seconds of those 10.8, but then Hart he was right up on Dan Clark as if Dan had no dribble, but he did have a dribble, and he just took a little sideways dribble and got him decent look.
Firstly, nice patience from Manchester. That was a play for Dan Clark.
Yeah.
The only guy who was shooting that ball was Dan Clark, and I know that because when Will Saunders came off the screen, he was open.
Yeah.
And Will Saunders came off the screen on the wing, and he was open to shoot it. And my eyes popped out of my head when he didn't shoot it, to be honest. But the reason he didn't was Dan Clark was popping out. But Joe Hart read that, and and whilst you say he was up without a dribble, that's fine because they've got to make a 3. So you're literally trying to get him off. The only thing he did was he took 1 step too high, because Dan Clark is always going to shoot off his left-hand dribble. He's always going to shoot the left-hand step back because he's a big fella. So a right-hand dribble takes the ball out in front of him, and then he's got to pull it back and show it. Left-hand dribble, he can put it in his pocket by his side, little side step, and shoot it. I've always been on the fence about fouling or not fouling. I'm really an absolute utterly undecided, situational thing. I've generally moved towards the position of not fouling, because if you foul, you have to how they foul, and not to foul the wrong way, not to get in on sportsmanlike. I think you also have to then deal with the fact that
I think it was Surrey one time tried to do that at home against Leicester with about 4 seconds to go, and Kuznod went like that and got 3 free throws.
Obviously you got three free throw foul, and then you've got the risk of an offensive rebound off the missed foul shot and kicked out for a 3, which means you could lose the game. So I think as the skill, as the kind of the talent level of players goes up, the more sense it makes to foul. So the more chance you've got somebody pulling a 3-point shot out of the backside, the more chance there is of fouling, the more point there is to fouling. And obviously you're looking at Dan Clark on that, so you're Manchester, you've got Will Saunders and Dan Clark, and maybe that would be an argument towards fouling.
Clark had missed on the previous play.
Well, yeah, but that's all the more reason why you don't want him shooting another one. I will, no is the answer. So I think in a perfect world, what Joe Hart would have done would have been a run out there and slap Dan Clark on the arm.
Yeah.
With the ball at his hip. But then, as you say, Dan Clark might have gone up there and thrown it up. I was a little bit disappointed that Plymouth didn't do anything to disrupt the play. It was Armstrong wasn't trying to make a play. You're defending the 3-point line, so you should be pressuring them. You're not worried about if Armstrong runs past you for a 2. So you got to get, if you get right up to him, you can take something away. Instead, Armstrong was in passing mode. Saunders came across off the screen, and then Clark popped out, and Plymouth were kind of very reactive instead of causing Manchester to do something different. But Clark made a hell of a shot. Ultimately, I think if there was any game, if you look at the whole circumstances of the game, you look at Plymouth, who are down on bodies. They've got foul trouble as well. And they're playing against a Manchester team which is up on bodies and which is coming back at them. I think that's probably the game you'd want to avoid overtime in.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't want to give up overtime. You wouldn't want to give up that 3 in overtime because it was always going to be very difficult for them to win in overtime. But I'm not going to slate the coach for not fouling because it's always result oriented. If it bounces off the front of the rim, it doesn't go in. I think in those, it's just a balance. And in that circumstance, I don't think overtime's a disaster for Plymouth, to be honest. After all the effort they've put in, because it's like having the kind of the golden, whatever it was, Jason, and the golden fleece or whatever, in your hands, it's there, and suddenly they grab it away from you. There's a Greek, I'm not very up on Greek mythology, but there will be a Greek myth which has something to do with having something snatched away from you at the last minute. Scholars.
Sure, don't let Dan Clark hit a 3.
Don't let Dan Clark hit a 3.
So in overtime, you do get the sense like that must be it. Surely Plymouth have got nothing left, having, as you talked about, the lack of bodies, the minutes that they were piling up. But to be fair, it was pretty close in the extra period. It wasn't really until Anderson hits that 3 in the corner with about 30 seconds to go that it went away from Plymouth.
Yeah, that was a tough shot, but I thought Manchester's shots got incrementally easier in overtime. I thought Plymouth's shots got incrementally more difficult. And you just kind of hope it's that situation where you think, if you're Plymouth, you think, can overtime not be 3 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever? Because the longer the game went on, the more it favoured Manchester. And it's a game of numbers ultimately, and a game of percentages. And Manchester got away with one. You know, that's a kind of a relatively young BBL team if you take away Jamal Anderson. And basically the rest of them, Jack Hudson's played a little bit. Will Saunders really doesn't have much in the BBL. Dan Clark's got nothing in the BBL. And that's about it really. So none of them are really knowing. Josh Steele a little bit in the BBL, and Jordan Whelan a little bit in the BBL. Jordan Whelan came in early actually in this game, played well, got going to the rim, but none of them really kind of been in the thick of that travel. Dan Clark won't have had much like that Wednesday night trip down the M6 to play on a hard floor in a theatre. With a lion or a fox, whatever, running around. It's different. It's different, and they got punched in the face by it, and they just managed to survive. Shout for Kofi Josephs, you have to give him a shout. It's just an incredible performance just to drop 46 on them. However, the defense is being played. Kofi can shoot. There's a lot of things he can shoot, and his athleticism is sufficient whereby he can also slash. His issue with Kofi's always been his mindset in relation to his commitment to it, because he's so talented. He's a talented artist. He's got all the things on the go, and his kind of focus on it from a game-to-game basis. But on a one-off game, he can light it up, and he was great in this game.
He was, as you say, 46 points off 26 shots is quite impressive. Ubiaro 11 and 5. I saw an X-ray, which I think was his hand. It's certainly the implication was his hand that showed a broken bone in it.
Well, he wasn't playing tonight, so that's possible.
He wasn't playing. Yeah, so I think he did that because his hand was taped up in the game. So I think he managed 11 and 5 with a broken hand, which is quite impressive.
Plymouth need that like a hole in the head as well.
Well, exactly. Armstrong 28 and 5 for them. Another game where they had 6 guys with 9 points or more. They've got so many people who can put the ball in the basket. Let's get to the European game on Wednesday night, and the Lions even were flashback 20 years.
Henlon play?
Henlon was great. Filled up the pain. Yeah, absolutely. Played in Germany where they were playing Medi Bayreuth, and they lost 97-78. So they finished second in the group because they both teams finished 5-1, and they lost out on their head-to-head, having only won by 10 at home and losing by 19 on the road. Bastian Doreth, who, if I remember rightly, he was out when they played.
I didn't recognise him.
The first game. Well, they certainly he certainly showed lines what they were missing in the first game, because he was knocking down shots early on as they got on top.
Yeah, I mean, London gave up 58 points in the first half of this game. No, you can't do that in a European basketball game. You must have done a lot of European games, but I'm guessing there's not many teams come back from giving up 58 points in the first half.
No.
And the reason that they gave up 58 points in the first half was because they played defense the same way they played against Katzenberg. And Katzenberg are not Bayreuth. Bayreuth are just a far better team. And whilst they could play that way against Katzenberg and give up the shots they gave up to Katzenberg and still be tired at half time and ready to flick a switch, they really couldn't do that against this German team, because the German team were ready for them. And a couple of interesting, personnel things interesting. Kelly started the game. He never came back off the bench after the second half. So I think I'm not sure what's going on with him. There's obviously some concerns about either is the way that he is committing himself to games, or his defense, or whatever.
There might be an injury thing. I'll pick it up in the Surrey game.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that might be it then. But without Kelly, they really don't have much physical or length in the back line. Tawaya played a little bit, but he's not going to be playing big minutes in Europe, or not going to be successful if he's playing big minutes in Europe. He can come in and be a spot player, I think. But then that leaves him with kind of Jordan Williams and Washburn. Will Neighbour's not getting off the bench at the moment in Europe, so they're playing very small. And the Germans got what they wanted. They got open threes, and they came down and knocked them down. And they were remorseless and they were ruthless in the way they knocked the shots down. They were all good shots. They were shots off the catch. But the thing that kind of told it for me was that, Vince obviously had a pop at them at halftime, because the first 4 defensive possessions of the second half were utterly different. Suddenly they're up in their face, they're forcing a turnover, they're clapping their hands, Reese is up there, they're all into it. And you saw the difference in intensity just in those 4 plays. This is what we could have done. Well, they can't do that because they're playing 3 games a week, and they're in a rhythm, and the Americans probably don't know the difference between the games. That there's a difference between Katzenberg and Bayreuth. Now, to the guys on the Lions bench, well, there's no difference at all. These are just European teams. We're flying abroad, and we beat them all already, so we can beat them again.
Yeah.
And that's something they're going to have to be wary of moving forward. They're going to have the appropriate fear of the opposing team.
I think the best stat I can give you to show you the difference between the first half and the second half defensively is the first half. Bayreuth were 12 for 23 from 3-point line, and in the second half they were 4 from 10.
Yeah. So they got 23 looks, and I tell you now, I watched that game. I watched the game whilst I was watching Plymouth as well. I don't remember him shooting many bad shots. In fact, any bad shots in the first half. Now, you can't be giving up 12 threes to anybody in half a basketball. You can't be giving up 58 points, and you can pick up the energy. But if you pick up the energy, and all that does is reduces the deficit from 17 points to 12 points within like 5 minutes of the third quarter beginning, then you're burnt out. You're still 12 points down. That's your run. They're going to come straight. A good team's going to come straight back at you. So ultimately, the lesson in this game is London cannot spot good teams in their own gym open shots, and they're going to have a slightly different level of defensive energy. And Justin didn't play in this game, which kind of surprised me a little bit. And London kind of got into a running game with them near the end. So it was small v small, but they were never. Even the 10-point thing, it never looked like they were going to get within 10.
No. Second half, they never looked like they were going to get it back to single figures. Bayreuth with 6 of 10 from the 3-point line for 22 points. Aneem had 5 of 8 from 3-point range for 21 points. They had 6 guys in double figures. Dirk was the one who kept them ticking over, really, particularly in the first half. He had 30, shot 7 of 9 from behind.
Dirk is playing incredible basketball. I mean, let's be honest, if it wasn't for him in this basketball game, it would have been ugly by the half. Because he's able to stand in the corner. He's coming off curls. He's attacking. He is just as bona fide a scorer as we've seen a long time in our league. It's very rare. It's a long time since we've had kind of a wing who's been in the running for an MVP. If you think about it, there's not that many. And he is a wing. I mean, he plays a little bit 2, a little bit 3, but basically he's a wing player. Normally it's a point guard, or maybe the fourth. But he's right in the middle of the MVP running now. I think the way he's playing at the moment, difficult to know how he could play better.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, he's really good. So I got the groups right.
Yeah, you did.
To me last week. So Lions are in the group with Bark and Bears, who Leicester played a couple of years ago in the BCL qualifiers. Saratov of Russia, not quite deepest, darkest, but southwestest. And then our friends from Turkey. And I was disappointed to learn when Niall Gray texted me to say Plymouth are playing on the same night that Lions are at home to Cheshire, so there'll be no irate former Raider fans.
It'd be like a convoy of truck drivers down the A1 in Newcastle, slowing the traffic down, going up from Plymouth to London to wave the flags to complain about the demolition of their basketball club. It would be, I mean, maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Maybe with a comedy fox at the front.
Yeah. Right, so let's
documentary that is.
Let's move on to the BBL action on Friday night, and we'll start with another very close Sky TV game. Glasgow Rocks.
I'll pick them.
Well, it's not like they didn't have overtime last week.
Yeah,
Glasgow Rocks 99, Bristol Flyers 78. Well, this was for a quarter pretty close, and actually in the beginning there was a sort of shades of last week with Delpesh going to work inside, and they looked like they were going to dominate the points in the paint in the way that they did in the cup meeting, but they sort of fell away really.
There was some interesting kind of, both coaches beforehand talked on your interview of adjustments. Everybody likes to say adjustments. It's a great basketball word because basically you have to do them because otherwise you're doing exactly the same, and exactly the same isn't a good idea. So everybody has adjustments. Glasgow's adjustment, the first position they came out in a zone, and then after that they decided they were almost going to trap the screen and roll. It was a very, very hard hedge, which meant that 3 times the point guard threw the ball to Delpesh. With Delpesh's man standing at the top of the key, and one of the Glasgow forwards, normally Green, having a shuttle across to defend it. And 3 times Delpesh scored, and the third one was an and one. So as adjustments go, the idea, we'll make the guards give the ball up and throw it to the big. That really didn't accomplish much other than get Delpesh going. And I think going forward a little bit, defending Bristol, I think they're a team whereby you want them to be making the decisions to beat you. You don't want to be forcing them to do a certain thing, because I'm not sure about the decision making of their guards. Evans, I think, is more of a scorer. Miller, more of a slasher. And what happened, the way that Glasgow started defending him in the game, was Glasgow told them, right, you're gonna have to throw it to the big guy. And they threw it to the big guy 3 times, and the big guy scored. So they made the decision for them. Glasgow, they're still running through their lineups a little bit. They're still trying to integrate Green a little bit and figure out exactly what.
Made a few shots early on in this game.
He's a shooter. He's clearly a shooter, and I think he's clearly a serviceable BBL player. But he's still only 3 games in, so that's early. And they played the whole game without Gareth as well. But I didn't think, even early, you're looking at Bristol and you think some of these guys are going to have to step up and play some D, because ultimately Glasgow are very good in their gym at getting the shots that they want, at getting open jump shots and getting the ball inside to Ali Fraser. It's a very simple kind of plan, as it were. Ali's their go-to guy. If they need a bucket, they throw the ball down there to work off him. But otherwise, they're surrounding him with shooters. And I didn't see in that game Bristol really take much away from Glasgow. I'm not sure what they had decided they were going to do different. They took Johnson away a little bit in the first half, but I thought Johnson kind of took himself away. I don't think Johnson looked fully healthy, and I noticed he wasn't playing tonight. But the fact that Glasgow could still score with the ease that they scored without Johnson being impactful, I think was troubling for Bristol.
He was still finding people. He just wasn't. He wasn't quite at that full tilt, and he wasn't looking for his own shot.
Yeah, I think he was being passive a little bit. I was a little bit surprised as to why he seemed to be playing within himself. But they were still able to move the basketball. You know, they've got an energetic guard in Harris, and Gareth's very comfortable playing, you know, Johnny Bunyan and Fraser Malcolm now. So they kind of got a bit of depth to them, which also helps them. But the fact that Bristol were kind of making tougher shots than Glasgow were, I thought, throughout the game, you know, that's not easily quantifiable. You can't say it, but it's just an impression you get as the game is going on. That Glasgow also do well, very well in transition. I thought they got out and started running a little bit in the game as well. Helped them. Cheap points really matter. But yeah, and then when we come to the third quarter, they kind of put their foot down, didn't they?
Yeah. Fraser really took over the game, I thought, at that point. He was really good, Ali.
Yeah, well, I mean, the advantage Glasgow have with Ali Fraser is that he's a high percentage scorer and he gets the ball in the same position, regular positions every single time. He shot 11 of 13 in this game. Anytime anybody on your team shoots 11 of 13, then you've got a good shot of winning, you know, 23 points on 13 shots. And when you add in the fact that Jack Donnelly also gave them 13 points inside in 16 minutes, you know, those two combined for 17 of 23 shooting, you know, that's tough. Now, in the last game, Bristol dominated them inside. So I think words had obviously been had in relation to the way that those two had to play. And they came out and they demonstrated it. In response to that, the Bristol big guys probably weren't quite as impactful. Delpesh, 8 of 15. Simmons, 4 of 9. But their shots just came a little bit more difficult, particularly when you think that Delpesh made the first 3 or 4 he made. So after that, he's probably like 3 of 12 or something like that. And then they didn't quite have enough. I have an issue with their point guard play. I'm not sure that the ball gets a bit sticky with Evans, as the, you know, and then they struggled around. From memory, they struggled around the beginning of the second quarter as well when Joseph came in the game, when the backup came in the game. So, you know, they're going to have to find a way of keeping things flowing, I think, because when they move the ball, they look good. When they attack, they look good. But when it gets dribble, a bit, the ball gets a bit sticky, bit one out stuff, then I don't think that's the way they need to play at all.
Fraser, you mentioned his numbers. Johnson, 16 points and 12 assists. Jack Domney, 13. I mean, they had a bunch of guys in double figures. Again, it always helps when you spread the scoring. You talked about the bigs, the guards as well. 5 of 12 Jacobs, 5 of 13 Evans, 5 of 15 Miller. That's a lot of shots for 15 makes between the three of them.
A lot of shots, yeah. 15 or 43, you know, it's not really going to get it done. And given that the other guys who shoot the majority of the shots need a little bit better in the way of production. I mean, that's pretty self-evident. You know, it's a pretty easy thing to say. Look at the stat sheet and say these guys have to shoot. But it's about the quality of the shots that they're getting. And particularly Evans had some like late shot clock situations where he had to take a dribble and he's shooting off. And he's a kind of a tough shot maker. Evans, he can make tough shots, so he's not scared of them. But that's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
It also means you're willing to shoot them. And in reality, you prefer you didn't have to shoot them. You prefer you shot the ones you're going to make.
Right, so let's move down to Leicester, where it finished Leicester Riders 94, Cheshire Phoenix 72, in another do-over from last week. Larry Austin Jr. making his debut for Cheshire, and also Noah Dickinson into the starting lineup. It's only the second start he's had for them, and the last one was on the 15th of October. Bradley had started 10 games before the first Leicester game that he didn't play in. So a change in the lineup with a bigger lineup of Dickinson and Ocherobia out there.
Yeah, I'm surprised at that, I'll be honest, but I understand why they felt they had to do something. Their game plan seemed to be to clog up the middle, to stop any easy baskets, easy penetration. And both, you know, Dickinson and Ocherobia take up a lot of space in there. So that's kind of the plan. The downside of that, and there's always a downside, there's always an upside, there's always a downside, you've got to balance the two. Downside to that was they also take up a lot of space at the other end. So you've got to get good shots as well whilst you're clogging the pin at one end. And they struggled early in relation to that. Teddy made a tough three, Ben Mockford made a very tough three, and then Ben Mockford kind of drove into the midst of about 8 people and managed to get one to go off the rim, but that was the only time they scored, I think, in the first 4 or 5 minutes. And they looked just a little bit out of sync. But I understand, you've got that size, you want to put it on the court. It was interesting that, Dickerson hadn't finished the game last week when he'd been scoring at will, but he did start this game. So, he must have had a good week of practice, I can only assume. So they've got a lot of, they came across in this game as a team with a lot of moving parts. Leicester came across as probably a team without enough moving parts, to be honest, because, missing Nelson Henry, we've talked about it before, it kind of sends a shiver all the way down the spine of their team, because it means that everybody else has to do slightly different roles and not exactly what Rob brought them in for. And the one thing that Rob's very diligent about every year, you see it in his teams, is that their players are brought in with a specific skill set and a specific role in mind. And you work it out over the first few weeks as to who's going to start and who's not going to start. But basically, they're all there to kind of counterbalance each other. And the situation with that is when one part comes out, and Nelson Henry is a very, very big part, very, very efficient scorer, a little bit like Ali Fraser. Easy to play with, doesn't take bad shots. When he falls out, there's a knock-on effect. And the knock-on effect is that Walker plays more. So Walker didn't come out until like the 2-minute mark in the first quarter. And I can't remember him playing many 8-minute stretches for Leicester since he's come back. And his effectiveness, he doesn't look in the best, I'm not saying the best of shape, is probably wrong. He doesn't look fully healthy to me. He's certainly not playing in the manner in which we've seen him play before. And he's not getting the ball thrown to him as much as a result. So that then skews their team as well. And then the fact that Cheshire played Leicester physical early meant that Gino got a bit aerated. And it's, he's the head of the ship, he's the head of the snake, so you've got to try and chop that head off. But he got himself, I say aerated, he got a daft technical, got a bit frustrated. And through the whole time, Cheshire are hanging around, Leicester are kind of playing with them, what seemed to be like, how are these guys hanging around? Because we're getting every shot we want. We're getting wide open threes. Mark Loving had 3 wide open threes in the first 6 minutes, missed them all, but we know what that means. And they were hanging around, and Chester and Leicester's frustrations were kind of building. Adekoya's playing well, and he played well for Leicester again as kind of the backup 5. But overall, it was just kind of a to and fro game. Cheshire's struggling a bit with their lineups as well, because they've got a surfeit of big guys. They've got like 4 big guys and Josh McSwiggan, and Josh McSwiggan's probably a stretch 4. So that's 5 guys to play 2 spots. And Bradley hardly got off the bench in this game. I know he'd been ill. And Bacardi obviously got off the bench a little bit, but didn't stay around for long,
So let's get, because there wasn't really much in the first half. So let's go. Knicks finished the first half well, started the third quarter well, got into an 8-point lead. And you could feel I was watching this back on the way back from Glasgow, and you could it felt a little tetchy. And the funny thing was, we turned it on at the end of our game, because obviously me and Ro just watched the end of the show, but we put that game on because it was close, and there was something going on, and we were never quite sure what just happened there. Why is everybody wandering about in the middle of the court, sort of thing? But there was obviously an incident that the key motion cameras didn't pick up that led to a second technical and therefore a disqualification for McCarley. Said something on the way out because there was people irate all over the place.
There was all sorts of stuff going on. I mean, basically, Radwan Bakar is a big guy, and I think he'd already picked up a technical at some point. Maybe on sports, I'm not sure.
It was a few minutes earlier.
So, and he's a big guy, but he's also a guy who's had his minutes cut quite significantly recently. They've got this logjam of big guys, and when he was playing well, they won a couple of games and they played well with him. And now he's only playing 5, 6, 7 minutes, so he's coming in to make an impact in the game. He's not coming in to beat people up or anything like that, because I've yet to ever be in a game where a coach has said, go out there and knock him down. It doesn't happen like that. The big guys are expected to set screens. If people are running, that's a problem. The last enforcer we had in this league, can you think who it is?
I'm hoping you're not going to say Hilroy Thomas here.
No, I'll go a little bit after that.
Okay.
Latter-day Youngblood.
Oh, indeed. Yeah.
Latter-day Rob Youngblood. Yeah. Well, he was a guy who, He didn't go in there to knock you over, but if he knocked you over, he wasn't worried about it. But because he was a vet, he knew how to handle it. He knew how to deal. He knew how to do it the right way, if you know what I mean. So yeah, but since then, Bacali doesn't want to go in there and knock people out and get himself thrown out of the game. Bacali wants to play. He's a player. He wants to play. He wants to show he's valuable to the team. So from what I could see on the screen, he sets a screen on Crandall, which you can't see on the screen whether it was overly tough or whatever, but it was called an offensive foul. Crandall's been edgy the whole game anyway. So it looks like there's a bit of language between them. The suggestion that Crandall might have grabbed Bacali's ankle, but Bacali's then, basically got up and into it and said something back. Refs have called a technical. Bacali's then lost it. And Mackenzie's then come to defend his teammate, which is good, and kind of stand there and give him a bit back. And refs call another technical. But the problem is they can only call one technical because he's already had one. So anything he does after that, he's already disqualified, so it doesn't count. So, which I didn't know, but I've done some research. Thank you to my researcher who texted me today to tell me. So that's why they only shot one foul shot. He did actually get two technicals, but the ref had to rescind one because he'd already been disqualified, which creates the lovely thought.
It doesn't go onto the bench then?
No, it doesn't go on the bench because he's not allowed on the bench.
Okay. Yeah. So if a guy fouls out and gets a technical, that goes onto the bench.
But once he's disqualified, you can't sit on the bench anymore. So there's a wholly false in real life feel that you become a non-person once you're disqualified, which means that you think about this.
Anything you want.
You can do anything you want, but you can only be disciplined for that in relation to future games. Right. So you can do everything you want, but it might be the end of your career. You could do a London Leopards and pick up the Gala Defoe and pick up a bit of stick and a big stick and run around the court trying to hit people over the head with it. Long time ago, I think. But the name that is etched in all our memories, the Carlo Defoe. But yeah, so he had to go, and obviously the problem with having to go at Cheshire at Leicester is that you got to walk straight past the Leicester bench as well, and it's and so there's a bit of I say not say aggro, but there's a bit of ill feeling, and the problem for Cheshire was that I don't think it changed Cheshire much, but I think it lit a little bit of a fire under Leicester. And not necessarily a fire in that they weren't trying beforehand. I just think a fire in relation to their focus on the game, because what then happened was Cheshire played 2.5 minutes of abominable basketball, and the game was done. And it started with Josh McSwiggan fouling Loving about 8 feet outside the 3-point line with 0.4 seconds on the clock. It's an incredibly bad foul. Just gave them 3 points before the end of the quarter. The first play of the fourth quarter, Gino runs the same play that they ran last week, and he runs it off. Connor comes off a double screen from the baseline. Teddy goes over the screen trying to
it wasn't even just that. He missed him. He was halfway round, and then he went, oh no, he's gone, and then he was trying to recover.
And Connor's wide open, and Connor nails a three. The next play, Gino gets the basketball and gets into his little pocket on the right-hand side and flings it across his shoulder. And Mark Lovin is wide open for a three. And I think they gave up 4 threes in a row. And those threes were coming because they'd had them the whole game. And while Cheshire had made some tough shots, Leicester had missed some open shots. It was just a matter of time when the floodgates cracked. Now, the only way the floodgates weren't going to crack and open was if Cheshire were in Leicester's heads to the point whereby Leicester lost their composure. And that's the thing with Crandall. That's the most interesting subplot of the whole top of the league season at the moment is in relation to Gino, because he's the only kind of main player in the league. I say main protagonist in one of those top teams who has been here before but isn't fully formed. So we all know enough about him to be able to assess him, but he's not like a Fletcher or a Robinson who's been here 6 or 7 years and we know what they are, but we see bits and bobs, but we've seen it all before. And he's not like one of those rookie guards like Anderson or Johnson at Glasgow or people like that who we're all kind of waiting to see what they are. With Gino, we've got an idea what he is, and he's got that second season thing and he's the MVP. So how is his head going to handle all the extra stuff that comes with that. And it's not easy. It's not as easy as it sounds, because players expect the respect of that, and they don't always get the respect from the refs that they want. And you get everybody else now is lining up to stop you. And people now, if you're talking, you're not just the new guy in town, you're the guy you won last year. So people are going to talk back. And he's going to have to come to terms with that. And I think he did in the fourth quarter. And, I don't have any problems with the fact that I'm sure he will, but it's just a little bit different. It's just watching it happen in real time is really intriguing to me. But Cheshire's game plan was to give up open threes almost. And Leicester's, that's never going to beat Leicester.
No, Leicester's first 7 scores of the fourth quarter were all 3-pointers. Washington 2, Crandall 1, Loving 4. But by the time Leicester scored their first 2-point basket of the game, they were 20 points up, 85 of the fourth quarter, 85-60.
And here's the thing: the two guys on the Leicester team, right, that you circle not to allow open threes are Washington and Loving. They're my first 2 names on my scouting report, which is Loving is there to stretch the floor for Crandall, give Crandall space to work. He is he's Dan Clark in a different body, in a spindlier, smaller body. That's what he is. And you cannot, and if you stand there and let him line up open threes, he's eventually going to make them. And Connor is Connor. We've talked about Connor multiple times before. And that's not easy to stop. You can't stop them the whole game, but they can't be getting 6 open looks in the fourth quarter of a close game. And you can't expect that to happen. So I think Leicester really did well to maintain the composure in the fourth quarter and make plays. I think Cheshire kind of self-destructed a little bit, but their defense the whole game wasn't particularly good. And this idea of Crandall in the game really didn't get to the rim, and Cheshire were blocking that off. They had the big guys in the game. They were really packing the paint, and I don't know if that's the way to go. I prefer to give up tougher shots to Gino in the lane, and I would give up open threes to Mark Loving and Patrick Whelan on kickouts. So we'll see how teams start defending them differently. But it was good to have a bit of fire in the game, wasn't it? No harm. And ejection's always fun.
So Loving ended up with 32 points, 6 of 10 from 3-point range, 10 of 11 from the free throw line. Washington had 4 of 8 threes for 14 points. Crandall 11 and 9 assists. They were 14 of 35, Leicester from behind the arc. Cheshire 6 of 19, which, given the fireworks of last week and Ben Mockford. Teddy was 17, 12 and 7.
Just on that, I think Leicester's perimeter defense was much better than it was the week before. They really got in the face of the shooters. Mockford made some tough shots, but they were tough shots. Even at times, Mackenzie drove him past a couple of times in the second quarter, but it's because he was up there playing defense and he's relying on the help behind him, which wasn't there. And you could see a real emphasis in Leicester's game plan, which was, we're not going to stand there and let these guys shoot threes on us. And I thought that was probably a game plan that should have gone the other way as well.
So let's move on to Saturday. Surrey Scorchers 72, London Lions 85. Jules Dang Akodo now a Scorcher. Dirk Williams with 9 early points, and hard to believe this, but Scorchers were down early on here. They got behind early in the game.
They never led, I think is the phrase. And I mean, it's beginning to actually haunt me. It's the team that always seems at the behind. Wow. Scorchers struggling. Davis not there. He's a big player for them. In that gym in particular. Obviously Gilchrist Lawrence not there. So they're down, not to they're down to the bones, if not the bare bones. And London cruising, and they are cruising, they're playing at a certain speed, the same way, and they're really playing through Jordan Williams a lot. Kelly again started this game and didn't play much after the first quarter.
I'll get to that in 1 second. First of all, just the one thing we should know early in the middle of the first quarter, Teo Ogundengbe's first basket of the game took him to 5,000 league points. He's the 20th player in league history to get there, and he's right behind Nate Reinking now. He might have even overtaken them. I can't remember.
How many current players are at that? Is there anybody?
I think he's the only one. I think he's the only current player over 5,000. I need to double check it. Defoe must be, yes, surely, yes.
I'm guessing he is. But he didn't score much in his first few years. But I can't think of anybody else who might be.
Yeah.
But that's a hell of an achievement, you know. He played a lot of games, Theo. Doesn't miss many games. You know, he looks after his body. He must look after his body because he's, you know, he's there every day. You don't see, it's almost like the LeBron of the BBL.
Yeah.
You know, he keeps playing games, and that you have to do that to get to 5,000 points. It's not something to be kind of sneered at. You know, 5,000 points in any league is impressive. And you know, we're talking some legends of the game once you get to that 5,000-6,000 number.
Yeah. So 10-0 run around the break. Lions get out to a 13-point lead, 20-33. To be honest with you, it kind of stayed there for the rest of the.
Just on this though, there was a little kind of vignette in this game which just taught everything that you want to know. I think Surrey got it at one point in that little point about the beginning of the second quarter. They got it back down to 6. And they and London had to call a timeout, and they had a couple of energy plays off it. And then they came back the next 2 times down, and they gave up, I think, I can't remember the first, it was a dunk to somebody, and then missed a shot. And then Reese, the next time down on the left wing, dribbled the basketball down the court, and Surrey didn't have anybody guarding him. They literally had nobody in his side of the court. And he stepped up, knocked down the 3. The 6-point game, the energy, the adrenaline, it became an 11-point game. And the game, and it was, you know, and it was a bad shot at the other end. And that's Surrey. That is their problem. They cannot string 5 defensive possessions together. They can score enough, but they cannot string 5 defensive possessions together. And when they get a couple, you know, it's, you know, it leads a team that's playing against them to be comfortable that you're in control of the game because you know you can get the shots you want when you need them. And it happened a couple of other times as well in the fourth. It happened in the fourth quarter as well once.
So Kelly, he had a dunk just before a timeout, a Surrey timeout. It was early in the second quarter, and he didn't return. And shout out Hoops and Hockey YouTube with their exclusive GoPro footage. Check it out.
All right, we'll
get your YouTube stuff. But Niall basically sent me a little clip because what had happened was as Kelly comes off, he was just like he'd hurt his shoulder. He was sort of grabbing at it or touching at it or something, which then he never came back after that. But the fact that it was just like you watch the dunk in real time, you would never know he did anything. It was only because he was walking off. And so whether that, going back to the Wednesday game we were talking earlier, whether that was an issue ongoing and he's just sort of tweaked it and that's why he's not come back in.
Sounds like what football managers would call a niggle.
Yes.
Niggle. Not good if you're a 7-foot flyer whose job is to stretch your arms a long way, play 3 games a week and stretch your arms a long way before the hoop before throwing a basketball down violently. All right. Well, that it can be interesting to see what they do if they, you know, now they're in the second limb of Europe. Are they going to pick up another big body? You know, one understands that finances aren't an issue, so you know, they might need one. I'm not sure that what they've got now is sustainable. I like playing small. I've always liked playing small, but playing small 40 minutes against good bigs is different. Just to, you know, to play small 20 minutes against BBL reserves, you know. So yeah, no, I'll be interested.
I mean, basically nothing much happened in this game after that. It was the most sort of like bouncing along at sort of around 10, 12.
Because Surrey can't string together the stops that they need, and they played hard, and they made enough shots. Macklemore made some tough shots, you know, and they kept kind of knocking around that kind of 7, 8, 9, 10-point margin. But at no point did, even when, you know, Vince threw Will Neighbour out there, you know, and you think, oh, well, Will's not played in about 4 weeks, so they've got a real chance of making a run here. You know, they didn't make enough smart plays in a row to do it. And they're a bit down on body, so, you know, they do need Davis back, so I'll give them a little bit for that. And they only gave up 83 points, which is better, you know, 85, which is better defensively. I
just want to pick up on that, but first of all, Hamrick 17, Jameson 14 and 17 rebounds.
Yes, Jameson is a unit.
Yeah,
I saw him in the flesh. He is a real unit and kind of a blue-collar, hard-working player. Not a great fit with Robertson, and what you see is Creon kind of brings him in and out and is kind of swapping him a lot.
Yeah.
But you know,
the thing I wanted to get into, it's on the London stats. Jordan Williams 21 points, 9 of 12, 10 and 6, close to another triple double. Dirk 20 and 7. We've already talked about how great he is. Reece 24, 7 and 6. So that is 65 out of 85 points. So everybody else got 20 points. But the minutes is an interesting one because we look at London, we say they've got all these players and blah, blah, blah. Dirk Williams, 36 minutes, 18 seconds. Isaiah Reece, 36 minutes, 16 seconds. Jordan Williams, 37 minutes, 40 seconds.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the Williams thing is because Kelly was hurt. I think that must be the case.
Will Neighbour only 9 minutes.
Well, Will Neighbour's not playing much.
15 minutes.
Jordan Spencer wasn't there. I don't know if he's hurt. Ward Hibbert's hurt.
Yeah. Spencer did his ankle in the TV game the other week. But even the guys who were there didn't really play. Lockhart played a minute and a half. Cugini didn't shoot the ball very well, but
he got kind of benched, didn't he, in the second half? Cugini, he never came back. And I mean, the load level, I suppose, will only work out down the line, won't we? It's not. It's certainly not optimal for Jordan Williams, who's playing 37.5 minutes in a game like that. Even in a game whereby he can, he's able to play quite comfortably at that standard and score the ball and get into a good rhythm. But they're going to have they're going to have a European game, the two-legged semi-final against Leicester. Then they're going to be, flying off to Russia, and then they're going to be playing through Christmas and then playing up in Newcastle in the trophy in the first round early into January. So it's amazing. They're an extremely deep team, but they're not that deep, if you know what I mean. It's a bit of an illusion, the depth at times, because the level of the guy that they've got, the level of players that they've got aren't easily replicated. So it'll be interesting to see if he works Will Neighbour in, because Will Neighbour is kind of the fourth big, which they really could use. But Mince hasn't shown any trust in him so far at all. It was this was probably the first game that he'd been allowed to play through his mistakes, I thought. Up until then, his games this season, Will Neighbour's been in for 35 seconds and taken out again. And in European games as well. So we'll see. It's a nice problem to have, though, isn't it? I mean, come on. They never look like losing the game. We're picking, I think. It's like I'm picking with Leicester won by 20.
It's just interesting that we talk about, and actually, isn't the point of having the likes of Neighbour and that to play them in the BBL games to take some of the minutes out of the.
Yeah, it is, but maybe they're a little bit more focused this year because they threw away 3 league games last year. They shouldn't have, and they lost the league as a result. So maybe they're seeing more traps around every corner. Maybe they're really going for it, and I mean that would be why you play Reece 36 minutes when you've got Robinson and Lockhart on the bench. Both of those guys can play. BBL can play together, but you want Reece in the game, and they never got out to more than 15 either.
True.
So to a coach, it looks very different to what it looks like to us.
Yeah, it does. It wouldn't have looked as comfortable to Vince as it did to me on my sofa, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's go to Sunday's games. Glasgow Rocks 107, Plymouth City Patriots 96, and Rocks coming out hitting threes early on. Bunyan, Hillsman, Green, and they get out to an 18-12 start. And you mentioned Johnson earlier.
Johnson wasn't playing. I mean, 2 things on this. We know how likely you are to lose away from home when you give up more than 95 points. If you're not playing in Surrey, the chances of winning are 4%. I think in the last 2 years, if you're not playing in Surrey and you give up 95 points away from home, you have a 4% chance of winning, 1 in 25. So thereby goes the story. Plymouth playing without Dusha and Ubiaru, with Josephs and Graham Bell in. And they've literally changed their whole, they haven't changed, nothing's been changed for them, but as a group, they've changed entirely as a result of those additions and those subtractions, because they've gone from being what was a defensive scrappy team who couldn't score enough to an offensive aggressive team with those guys getting plenty of shots, but their defense just absolutely just was appalling. because of that, they could score in this game. I thought Joe Hart played great in this game because he actually played both ends. And he made shots in the first 3 quarters when no one else could, but he was also back in defending. But Carpenter defended relatively well. Kingsley is struggling. He doesn't look like he's healthy to me, or if he is healthy, that's a problem because at the end of the game he pulled up with a foot injury. Kofi and Rowell. Kofi in this game was off. Just as much as he was on the last week. I know he ended up with 27 points, but he was so far off. What was concerning to me was that when he was off, he was missing, he was hanging his head, he was getting back late. I didn't see much commitment to defense. Raoul Graham is still working his way into shape, and that's being polite because I remember him 5 or 6 years ago at Leeds, and he was above the rim every single play, and he's not there at the moment. And I thought it's really had an impact on the defense. And that can happen sometimes because guys get used to playing with each other, and they're on a string together defensively, and they're kind of fighting for each other. And then new guys come in, new guys are taking most of the shots. The whole infrastructure changes. That said, Glasgow are playing without Johnson and Murray, and that's a good chance to beat Glasgow. It's your best chance to beat Glasgow without Johnson and Murray. And I think if they'd managed to get some form of defense together in that game, they might have had a shot at it. But as you say, game went on, both teams scoring almost at will first half. It wasn't so much anybody was getting stops, it was that teams were missing.
Yeah.
And I think if you fast forward it to about the middle of the third quarter, that's when it really kicked into...
Yeah, let's do that then. It was 50-44 at halftime, and then it continued to sort of bounce around that. And then Bunyan and Malcolm made some threes, and that was when the Rocks went out to a 13-point
Well,
lead.
what happened was towards the end of the third quarter, PJ became fed up with Plymouth's defense. He became fed up with it, and he put them in a zone. And I think it was, and the zone is is generally a go-to when what you're doing to start with isn't working. It can be a planned kind of wrinkle, but generally not at the end of the third quarter when a team scored 75 points. And at that point your zone is because, man, we're not guarding anybody. Let's see if we can guard space. And you went to the zone, and they got 2 good possessions out of the zone. And then they utterly forgot that when a little gingerhead fella catches the basketball 25 feet from the basket, you need to not only just be standing in a zone, because Johnny Bunyan, I guarantee, grew up playing against 2-3 zones. I guarantee it, right? Playing against 2-3 zones and catching and shooting it from 3 feet behind the line. But that when he has the basketball in his hands, you have to slant your zone to him, whereby he ain't the one shooting it. Because Gareth Murray's not on the court. So the only other guy you really don't want shooting is probably off a zone, is probably Fraser Malcolm, but he's hot and cold, so you could probably live with him beating you. Green wasn't in the game at that point. Green's a shooter. So then you've got kind of Hillsman and Harris and Jack Dombey in the game. Well, they can all shoot, but they tend to make the ones where their feet are set, where everything's right about them, and they knock it down. The people who make shots, they're not what I'd call shot makers, which sounds absolute nonsense to anybody who doesn't understand. But I think those of us who do understand, they're players who will make shots, but they're not guys who will go out and shot make. Johnny Bunyan's a shot maker. He will just knock it down. And for him to catch the ball in the same spot on 4 consecutive, I think it was 4 consecutive possessions or something similar.
You're into the fourth quarter now because
Kofi
had got it back to 3, 77, 74, and then it wasn't quite 4 consecutive possessions, but it felt like it. It felt like it.
It did. And that thing was, Plymouth were close at this time. Plymouth, and Glasgow must have been getting a bit itchy because they were only up by 3. It's a game that they have to win, and they haven't got Jordan Johnson to bail them out. And Harris played great in this game, by the way, and he absolutely, destroyed Kofi on the other end. And got to the rim, got dunks. He went coast to coast in the first half, and eyes popped out when he went. That was a serious coast to coast dunk.
I did almost tweet a Chara just to say that knee looks a real issue there for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's destroyed. But it's interesting because he stepped up when Johnson wasn't playing, and that's always something you'd like to see. Who's going to be the guy who steps up and takes kind of responsibility and says it's my time to shine, and it was him. And I thought that was really, really helpful for Glasgow. But you can't not guard Johnny Bunyan on that spot on the right-hand side of the floor at the top of the zone 4 times. In the fourth, I think the third one, PJ tried to get a timeout because he was so frustrated. And it's like you can zone them, but you have to slant your zone to the shooters. The whole point of a zone is that someone at some point is going to be unguarded, but it has to be the person you want to be unguarded.
Yeah.
There's a reason that you're unguarded. Now, if you're a high quality team, you don't have anybody on the court who the opposition want to be unguarded, which is probably when it's not a very good idea to play a zone. But they did, and those kind of Bunyan silos took it out to howitzers, took it out to like 14-point, 13-point game.
91-79, and Kofi made a couple of threes to cut it to 6, but they didn't get any closer than that.
No.
Johnny finished with 24 points. He was 6 of 7 from 3-point range.
Oh God, it kills me. Good job, Johnny, but I'm sorry, guys. Connor Washington, Johnny Bunyan, they kill me every week. They just keep doing what they do. Good win for Glasgow without Johnson, because Bunyan plays the point and demonstrates he can go off at 25. That's really helpful to them. Plymouth, as I say, they've got more scoring. They have to get that grit back. And whether it's Denzel's athleticism defensively, if he's out for a while, that's going to be a problem. LVC's control, whatever. But they got to find, they can't be giving up 107 points to a Glasgow team without Jordan Johnson and Gareth Murray. That's you got no shot of winning, just none.
Only 26 points for Kofi Josephs.
But there was a lot of them in the fourth quarter, and a lot of them when the game was done. I think as good as he was on Wednesday, I thought as disappointing as he was today, I'll be honest. He made some shots at the end. He was 6 of 12 from 3, but early on, it wasn't that he missed shots. It was that he seemed to get into his own head. He was hanging his head. He was holding.
I think it was like the 3rd or 4th shot of the game, and he'd missed them all. And there was one where he just sort of slapped the ground. And
so you got to get back, and that's the thing for Kofi. He is potentially the most talented scorer in the league, one off in relation to his ability to score the basketball.
Yeah.
But he's on a team who need him to score the basketball. So
he should lead the league in scoring this year.
It's a perfect fit. But as I say, how the bigger thing is, how is that going to translate into wins? How are they going to come to a kind of not an agreement, but how are they going to come to a settlement between themselves on the team as to who does what job? Because they're basically a new team now with Kofi Joseph and Raoul Graham, and without LVC Dush and Denzel, it's just a new team. So and they're still figuring things through. They've got more talent now. How are they going to use it? So good job, good luck, PJ.
Joe Hart 5 of 8, by the way, for 25.
I thought Joe was excellent in the whole game. I mean, of course, he's playing against his old team. He played at Glasgow, so
so was Kofi.
So was Kofi. Yeah. Wasn't coming off 46 though, was he?
No, he wasn't.
No.
Right, let's move on to the last game of the day. Cheshire Phoenix 86, Sheffield Sharks 67. So Dixon again in the starting lineup for Cheshire, and name on right, Teddy Raffle got them off to a good start, and they were 9 points up. And given they were going into this game 0-4.
5.
0-5, sorry, yes. And that can get into your psyche. So in some ways, it was important for them to get off to a good start. Good crowd in there once again, making loads of noise as you love, and actually that gets them up and gets it going, and definitely.
And on top of that, it was an awful trap game for Sheffield, because Cheshire have been battled. They've been battling the last 2 weeks. Sheffield haven't played. I don't think they played last weekend. I might be wrong, but maybe they played against London and they got beaten in the cup. That was last Friday night. So
no, it was Saturday. It was your birthday.
Indeed it was. So they played that game. Well, in that case, they probably should have come. They've had 8 days to think about it, but they never really got into a rhythm in that game. And Cheshire, in the meantime, have been battling Leicester, and Cheshire are 0-5, and therefore Cheshire are under a lot of pressure, because when you get to 0-5, 0-6, 0-7, that's when jobs are on the line. It's a horrendously harsh world. And Cheshire are an upwardly mobile organisation who are not expecting to be 0-6 or 0-7. So when that happens, they've already brought in one new guy. And they're kind of carrying 9 or 10 players at the moment. So there's a lot of pressure on those guys. And therefore, a lot of pressure can often equate to motivation. You know, I think that's what happened in this game. I thought they came out connected. I thought they came out offensively aggressive, but defensively a lot more aggressive than they were against Leicester. And Sheffield, a little bit systematic, but Sheffield weren't really ready for that. They, you know, Kipper Nichols struggled early. Kipper Nichols.
They really struggled to score, Sheffield.
They have these drafts. They do have these droughts, and they always have. Certainly, I say always have. That's a ridiculous overstatement. Sorry, they have this year.
Oh, in 1994, they won the league with the lowest scoring team in the league.
I remember that team. Yeah. Ditchwater.
So we say always.
Chris Finch and co. God, you know, I absolutely remember, admire, and I'm still bored by that team. I think it was the last two American season, wasn't it? And it was Finch and Cawthorne, and they brought Finch and Cawthorne. They were two of the best.
Roger Huggins inside.
Roger Huggins in the post, yeah. And Finch and Cawthorne were two of the best white collar kind of hard-working, systematic players. Jimmy Brandon had them all playing defense. And they
were the bomb squad.
They had the bomb squad. They just shut everybody down, and then they shut everybody down, and then made no threes to beat you. You know, and just pick you apart. So
anyway 2021 version Sheffield.
Yeah, I mean, you know, probably a little bit concerned, I'm guessing now. It's the third, you know, they won that game at Manchester, but they should have lost it. And which Glasgow won the last second. Then two kind of heavy defeats away from home. Then they're at Newcastle on Friday night on Sky. So it's kind of a bounce back game for them on Friday night coming. Why? I'm not sure. Interesting in this game, Atiba started Rodney Glasgow in the second half with Anderson, which is the first time he's done that, because I think that gives him a little bit more offensive creativity, a little bit more scoring. Williams is hit and miss, we've talked about before, and kind of it all comes down to Kipper Nichols. You know, I hate to say it, he really is. You look at, you know what you're going to get from Cook, you know what you're going to get from Del Pesh, you've got an idea what you're going to get from Mike Tuck. Williams a little bit hit and miss, but he's going to score eventually. Retino's going to knock down some shots, albeit didn't in this game, and Anderson's going to set the table. So the two kind of X factors are Glasgow and Nichols. Glasgow started very well, made some plays for them in this game as well to try and get them around the break at the second break, but Nichols really didn't, and you know, they become a far more difficult team to play against when he's scoring the basketball. I've said it before, say it again. So I don't know. The other thing is that when they're in these games, like the one at London and like the one they played tonight, they don't get out in transition much. You know, they don't get many steals. You know, they don't push the ball that much in transition. And that in the BBL is crucial. You know, when Sheffield play well, it's when they're scoring the ball in transition, and they're getting steals, and they can get out, and they got guys who can score. Retino can score, Anson get up the court. All of those guys, Joe Mazzulo can get up the court, but they didn't tonight, and they got trapped into a half-court game, and Cheshire just executed better. I didn't watch the fourth quarter, to be honest. The 21-point game. I watched
it was one of those things where. They did have a little run in the second quarter, 14-3 to cut it to 8, but then Mockford and Carey hit some threes, and really after that, nothing much happened.
Well, I mean, it took them ages to make a three, didn't it? And that's the other thing. If you're on the road and you're not making shots, it's hard in this league to kind of eke out a win. And I think it took them maybe 2 quarters or maybe 3 quarters before they actually made a three. I think Williams made a couple. And Cheshire had no such problems, because Cheshire, whatever we think of them, at the moment, they are working some stuff through. But if they get it figured out, they're going to have a lot of talent. Kyle Carey played 7 minutes in this game, you know, and Kyle Carey's played well for them. The new guy, we haven't talked about him yet, Larry Austin. Interesting. Seeing 2 kind of glimmers of him. He is not going to die wondering. He is someone who he reminds me a little bit of a guy at Sheffield a few years ago called Chris Alexander.
Yeah.
You know, in that he is a threat. Anywhere he's got the basketball on the court, he is a threat to be under your rim scoring. You know, and we always used to say with Alexander, if he got the ball outlet to an offensive rebound or defensive rebound, he better see one of our guys under the rim, because if he only saw one person in front of him, he was going.
Yeah.
I mean, he was going to score. And I think Austin might be exactly the same. I'm not quite sure I think he's probably, I haven't seen him make a jump shot yet, so we'll have to see what he's got in relation to that. But he's at the moment, if they're going to use him as a sixth man, he's going to be a pretty potent sixth man. So that could turn them around as well. Bradley didn't play again, so what's the where does he fit in the pattern? If Dickerson is the main guy, I think Dickerson had like 14 rebounds in this game, and I think Cheshire destroyed Sheffield on the boards.
Yeah, 14 rebounds he had.
I think Cheshire is something like 50 to 30 on the board, something like that. And at one point I looked at the stats. I think Sheffield had 15 or 16 defensive rebounds and Cheshire had 15 offensive rebounds. Well, that's not going to get it done on the road. If you're not making shots,
and you can't get it done anywhere, to be honest.
Yeah, if you're not going to get it done anywhere, but if you're not making shots as well, and you're giving up second shots, that's just a recipe for.
Well, I always think offensive rebounds is a bit of a misleading stat, because people always go, "Oh, look how well they did on offensive rebounds," which means you missed a lot of shots.
It does,
but if you've got 50% of the rebounds,
that's right,
those missed shots, then
you always have to compare it. You always have to compare it against defensive rebounds for the other team. Always, and that's the thing. And if you're giving yourself that opportunity, so it's kind of a kickstart for Cheshire. It's obviously what they needed. They couldn't afford to be going any further, I don't think, at this point, because then you don't want to have your season horizons defined in the first 4 weeks.
No.
When you get 0-5 or 0-6, there's a real risk that that's happened in your season horizon. Is maybe we can finish 6th, 7th, or 8th, and at that point, how do you motivate your players? Because you've got to keep your players going for a reason. Because the coaching group and the organization might think they can finish there, but the players are thinking, really, you want to be there you want to be aiming something higher than that. So it's an important win. So they've still got time to turn it around, but that time was running out in the short term. In relation to Sheffield, well, we're still waiting, aren't we, really? We're still waiting to see which is the real Sheffield. We saw them blow Manchester out, and we've seen them lose a couple of games. I imagine we'll get a good game on Friday night. I would expect a close game on Friday night for the telly, because, to be honest, you haven't been doing much of a job of that so far, have you?
No. Name on right, 21 points and 9 rebounds. Teddy had 12 and 6. They had quite a few guys in double figures. Top scorer for Sheffield was 11. Anderson and Nichols both had 11. Tough to win when the top scorer has 11.
11, yeah. To be honest, your banter in the fourth quarter of these dead games is quite entertaining at times. But
it's helpful having that third voice for that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. But I think you may wear thin after a while. We need a close game.
Yeah, we do.
We do.
So it's interesting, because I don't normally look at the league table this early on. I just printed it out now so I could just remind myself of the record of everybody. Only 2 teams undefeated: Leicester and London 2-0, and a sort of like melee in between. Manchester have obviously played 6 games, so they're top of the table with four wins.
Really important that they had to fit that game in at Plymouth on a Wednesday, wasn't it? When they've already played 5 games. Don't get me started on the scheduling. Don't ever get me started on it. It's just showing itself. So
I think there's still a lot of questions, aren't there, when you look at the
but league. We don't know the real Sheffield.
No.
We don't know the real Newcastle. We have an idea where Leicester and London are going to be, and there's nothing we've seen yet which changes that. Albeit Leicester need health and London need to survive their schedule. They're the 2 things. Glasgow again haven't quite.
Glasgow. I just wonder away from home how good are they going to be? Because that will be their. That to me will be their. I think they'll win a lot of games up there. That will be their.
And also Jordan Johnson. How healthy he. Because winning games against Plymouth at home different to going on the road against good teams without him. So that's an interesting thing. But they have the ability to be up there and beating the top teams. Who else have we got? Cheshire we've just talked about. Sheffield we're not sure about. Bristol. Bristol maybe being squeezed just by the quality of the league, the quality of the teams, because doesn't matter how good you are, eventually you've got to kind of start beating teams who are better than you, who are perceived as being better than you, to be better than them. I think that probably, I'm looking at them, there may be one guy short. You got Josh Rogers, Raf Thomas Edwards playing a lot of minutes, and you've got their American backup centre Simmons probably playing 15 minutes a game, and that's probably not optimal. They're probably one more athlete short with, but it's kind of the mode at the moment is to have two centres who kind of split the minutes at the 5 spot. It's never been that before.
No.
In this league, it would always be that you would kind of go small. You'd play your centre, then you'd promote a power forward for 15 minutes a game, and your centre would normally be an American big normally, and he'd play 25 to 30 minutes, and you would get that, and then you'd kind of find your way through the rest. Fill in. Leicester kind of changed that with their lineups over the past 2 or 3 years, when some of the other teams have followed. I'm not overly convinced by it. Your players have to be, if you've got the best two centres in the league, it's great. If you haven't, it's not quite so good, and you might be better off.
I think also in Leicester's case, you've got two very different centres as well. So I think that complements.
So Bristol, will see. Again, I'm not down on them, but I think they need to maintain their style. They need to play fast, need to play aggressive, and they might need Jacob probably to step up as a wing scorer. They're probably going to need a wing scorer, because you're not going to get consistent wing scoring from Rogers, who's basically playing the stretch for, or from Thomas Edwards, who's capable of scoring, but he's a defensive stopper and he's shooting 35%. So they need a little bit more from the wing to avoid Evans having to chuck up a lot of shots and dribble around a lot. Surrey
need to get in front in a game.
Surrey, I think it's the first time Surrey get in front in the game. That should be it. Someone should dig a hole in. Someone should kind of be stood on top of the roof of the building on a rainy day and just kind of batter a hole in the roof so the water cuts coming through the moment they get ahead, just so it can stop there. But no, they need they need to recalibrate their players. They need to get Davis back. They probably need another guy. They got some talented players. Hamrick and James are perfectly good BBL players. Kaelin is a guy you've got to be aware of. Robertson is just big and can play enough to be in the BBL, certainly. And Teo is Teo, and McLemore can make shots. They're probably, they're obviously without Davis, they're one guy short, possibly two guys short. But it's like we said, we already nailed them, haven't we? The team that everybody beats, who's hard to beat. And Plymouth.
And Plymouth, we kind of touched on.
Absolutely.
Now find the balance. They had the defense. They now have the scoring, and they've now got to find the equilibrium somewhere in between.
I mean, the fun game. I'm looking forward to the Leicester London 2 legs. I mean, I don't like 2-legged games, but I actually think that will actually help us kind of plot out the season a little bit when we see those 2 games. Just how they play against each other, how they defend each other, how the talent matches up. Over 80 minutes, the best group will most likely win. It's not always the same over 40 minutes. But over 80 minutes, the best group will likely win. And the manner in which they win will be intriguing. Will kind of point things ahead. London are the de facto favourites for everything. They have to be. In fact, probably, I was thinking about this and I was going back to the 2008-09 Everton Tigers team with Andre Smith and Midgley and those guys. Who had a lot of finance behind them as well. And the Newcastle team that year actually beat them, but they beat them 3 out of 4 anyway. But that was Trey Moore and Fab Flanoy and Leonard Stewart, and they beat them with willpower as much as with talent. It was more motivation and willpower, because I was kind of around the group at that time a little bit, and I think that's what's going to have to happen with London. I think if you just jog up and down with them and play with them and play at their level and play at their speed, I think their talent's going to win out if they stay healthy. So I think it's going to need a little bit of kind of almost FU mentality, kind of, the kind of talking. That's why I was seeing Mackenzie get up into Bakay and go there. That's encouraging, because that's what it's going to need, I think, from Leicester, or indeed from anybody else. to beat London, you're going to have to get under their skin, because ultimately we all, like the idea of professional sport being idealistic and, be shaking hands at the end and saying, well, jolly well played, old chap.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the highest point, there's animosity. There has to be animosity. And the league will be better if there is a little bit of animosity. The games will be better if there is a little bit of animosity. And we're not there yet because the games don't really matter yet. But those two will be the first two games that matter. And those teams are going to be seeing a lot of each other over the course of the season. They've already played each other twice, 2 more times in the cup, 3 more times in the league, potentially in the playoffs. So, it'll be interesting to see if that kind of animus builds up. It'll be fun. And then, as I say, the other teams, we don't know who's going to come up the pack. We don't know where Newcastle are in relation to how good they're going to be with Peel and the full roster. And Manchester, are they going to be able to sustain what they've started and keeping everybody happy and keeping their young guys are they going to fall in any trap games like they did at Sheffield, like they nearly did at Plymouth? Yeah. That's a risk because they haven't got much BBL experience, and it does matter.
It certainly does. Well, I will probably see you next Friday, Dave. But
I may have a word. Yeah, I may have a word. Pop along.
Everybody else, I'm sure we will see, or will see us. Maybe is the right way of putting it next Sunday, because I think we should wrap it up here.
You're not coming up on Thursday for the GB game?
I'm not actually. I'm doing EuroLeague on Thursday.
Oh, you see, far too important for us.
Yeah.
2 games in 2 days. It's.
I did 4 in 4 last 2 weeks ago. So yeah, got to keep busy.
Now I did call you a legend on commentary. I thought, was it? I thought, that is some desperate bootlicking.
I think you got legend status as well.
Yeah, but only after he realised he called you it, and then kind of gave me it as an add-on. I'll take that up with him separately. We need to get our billing sorted out.
Hoops and Hockey on YouTube, people. Go and give it a follow and a like and a share on all of the things that people say at the end of it.
Dan says it must be true. Good job, guys.
Right. We'll wrap it up there, and we will see you all next Sunday. For now, goodbye.